مشاهدينا الكرام، أهلا بحضراتكم جميعا. عايز أرجع مع حضراتكم سريعا لسنة 2013-2014 ونفتكر مع بعض في الفترة دي وقد إيه كان عندنا مشاكل في خدمة الكهرباء، وكان بيحصل انقطاعات متكررة للتيار الكهربائي وكانت بتستمر في بعض الأحيان لساعات. ده كان في القاهرة وفي محافظات مصر المختلفة. ويمكن مفيش حد فينا بينسى صيف 2014 لما حصل انقطاع كامل للتيار الكهربائي بشكل غير مسبوق على عدد كبير من المناطق في القاهرة الكبرى وعدد آخر من المحافظات. من أجل تجاوز هذا التحدي عملت الدولة المصرية بشكل كبير وبذلت مجهود كبير بتوجيهات سيادة الرئيس عبد الفتاح السيسي للتغلب على هذا التحدي، تحدي قطاع الكهرباء، واللي ما فيش شك بيؤثر بشكل مباشر على حياة المواطنين وبشكل مباشر وغير مباشر على قطاع الاستثمار بصفة خاصة والقطاع الاقتصادي بصفة عامة. والحقيقة أنه قطعنا شوط كبير جدا في هذا الملف واستطاعت مصر أنها تتغلب على هذا التحدي. واحدة من الشركاء في هذه المرحلة وفي رحلة تجاوز هذا التحدي والتغلب عليه كانت شركة سيمنز العالمية، واللي يمكن نفذت مع مصر عدد كبير من المشروعات في مجال الطاقة الكهربائية. على رأس هذه المشروعات 3 محطات من أكبر محطات توليد الكهرباء اللي تم إنشائهم في العاصمة الإدارية الجديدة والبرولوس وبني سويف، بطاقة لكل محطة حوالي 4.8 جيجا وات وطاقة إجمالية 14,400 ميجا وات. وتكلفة هذا المشروع أو ال3 مشروعات دي حوالي 7 مليار دولار. الحقيقة مش دي بس المشروعات اللي كان فيه تعاون ما بين سيمنز والدولة المصرية والقطاع الخاص المصري أيضا لتنفيذها، هناك أيضا عدد من المشروعات الأخرى. حول هذه المشروعات بيدور حوارنا مع ضيفي العزيز السيد جو كايسر، الرئيس التنفيذي ورئيس مجلس إدارة شركة سيمنز العالمية. Mr. Kaiser, welcome again back to Egypt and thank you for having us, and we're glad to have you with us on our Egyptian TV channel DMC.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
The pleasure is ours. Well, I know that you have met President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi a while ago, and we want to know, are there new projects? Let's start off. Are there new projects, new agreements, new negotiations?
I've been seeing the President today during the Invest in Africa conference here, but also last Monday in Berlin, where he was leading the African delegation for the Compact with Africa. So I've been seeing him twice, and it's always a pleasure to meet the President. He's an extraordinary leader for Egypt and the, I believe, the African world. And we had a good conversation among friends and among partners who respect each other. So it was a very good meeting.
Well, regarding President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, you said once before that he's the best negotiator you have ever met. And I'm sure you've met thousands of people around the world, from businessmen to investors to government officials to presidents. Why do you believe President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is the best negotiator you've ever met?
Well, he's certainly the toughest negotiator if it comes to, to the benefit of his people. Mm-hmm. And so he's, I've hardly met government officials and political leaders who have been so very much into, give me something for my people. And that's in essence what he did. And if you go infrastructure like energy or mobility or healthcare, it's all about the people, and it's all about the society. Yeah. So you could tell the legitimate interest in getting the best deal for the Egyptian people, and that's exactly how he obviously has been negotiating. But at the end of the day, it's relevant that there's a mutually beneficial understanding about what can be done. Mm-hmm. And in today's world, this is not just about going to places and make a sale, take the money, or first of all, deliver the product, take the money and run away, and then maybe come back again, if there's another project. Today, today's world, for Siemens, this is about infrastructure, it's about serving society in a profitable way. Mm-hmm. So we are not a .org company, so we need to make money, but we want to make money in a mutually beneficial way. So we've been bringing education, technology, benefits for the people, and have been also, of course, being well rewarded. So he is truly is fighting for a better future for the Egyptian people, and now it seems that he's also trying to bring that into greater context into the African world.
Well, you have came across some of the fields of cooperation with the Egyptian government. We'll go through that in depth. But speaking of the Africa Forum, Africa 2019, with its theme, Invest for Africa.
Yeah.
Definitely you know that Africa has some challenges and beautiful opportunities. What's your point of view if we're talking about this versus that? Challenges versus opportunities?
Well, I mean, the challenges certainly are that most governments, most administrations in many African countries are not experienced enough to deal with infrastructure build-up, industrialization. There is still a lot of challenges on the, let's say, on the governance side. You know, governance in terms of how to govern a country. But then also how to apply governance in industrial business interaction. So this is obviously is a challenge, definitely is. Second topic is that today they are on a very early stage of infrastructural development, in a very early stage of industrial development. So most of the income in African countries is about exporting raw material goods,
Yeah.
you know, be it cacao nuts or be it natural resources of any sort. And that means that only a very, very tiny part of the total value add, you know, is then being in the continent or in the country. That's a big challenge. And all those things, they don't come on their own, so there's got to be something to be done. That's the challenge, definitely. The opportunity is huge because it's one of the most populated continents in the world. And the opportunity is also that Africa still is from population side, it's very young. People have are ambitious, they have dreams, you know, they want to have a better life. So we have a responsibility to help them find this perspective for the future. Otherwise they will all go away. To different places, and that's no good for Africa. So we need to bring those opportunities to the country, or to the continent actually. That's an opportunity for Africa. The opportunity for Europe is that, and you see this now between the United States and China, that, you know, the big economic forces, like the US, like China, you know, they look at economic leadership. So the question is, if that all goes, you know, its own bilateral way, and multilateralism is going to fade out of global understanding on how trade works, the question is, where does that leave Europe? Where does that leave Germany, which is highly dependent on export economy?
Yeah.
So the opportunity is, if we get this one right, you know, Europe and Germany can actually develop the African continent and find another model of a long-term agreement on how to develop a continent and get the benefit of export and know-how transfer.
Yeah.
That's a big opportunity going forward. It does take time. It does take engagement. It does take investment. But I believe it's a massive opportunity for the 21st, 22nd century.
Well, it's a massive opportunity, no doubt, and I think all the African leaders and citizens now see how there is a great interest from different countries to invest in Africa for the sake of Africa. Speaking of the G20 African Summit that was just like a week ago in Berlin,
Yeah.
how did you see this, the importance of this summit and the conclusion it came out with?
Well, the compact with Africa is a part of the G20 when Germany was hosting the G20.
Yeah.
And our Chancellor Merkel and the German government is following up on it out of many reasons. One, obviously, is that if you give people a future in your own country, they're not coming to Europe.
Yeah.
Right? Second, and this is it's a very important interest. The second topic is that Africa deserves a meaningful and a serious long-term approach not just go in and out and deal with natural resources. That's not the way you develop an economy or a continent. So that's why it's a very serious attempt from the German government to push that really hard. We would love to see that more in the European context, maybe even in the G20 context. But for now, Chancellor Merkel is pushing that hard for Germany. Minister Müller, who is responsible for foreign development, is there too, very engaged to bring things forward. And German companies are helping to get the job done, such as Siemens, and of course others like Volkswagen in Rwanda, and many more examples. So things are on their way, they're being taken seriously. They are a continuous approach, which is very positive. I do like that President al-Sisi now is taking the lead for the African continent. He's a strong leader. He's done many things in Egypt, what others still should be doing. Think about the energy agenda, think about the matter with the Suez Canal, to bring infrastructure to the country and jobs and investment. So that's something which makes him very strong and very experienced, and also, of course, very, very competent as an African leader.
Yeah, and actually we see also great interest from China, from Russia, from different European countries. Some people believe that there's like more or less a competition between European countries, China, Russia, who's going to invest first and more in Africa. To what extent do you believe, from an African point of view, that the African leaders are taking care of that and will use this opportunity for the sake of the people of Africa?
Well, if there was a competition for Africa, it would be good, because then many people are coming and will do investment and do their best to help it for the greater good of the continent. So we'll see. I mean, all I can tell you is that I very much appreciate Chancellor Merkel's activities and initiative on the compact with Africa. There's still not very many African countries joining the compact with Africa. So far it's only, I think, 13 or 14, can be more. But others are also pretty much on their own. Think about Nigeria as a very powerful, relatively speaking, powerful nation within Africa, with a lot of people, and obviously through the petrochemical environment, very, very powerful. So there's a lot of initiatives. So if there's a competition for Africa, well, very good. May the best team win.
Yeah, I hope Africa uses it well. Do you think Africa is ready? I'm speaking here of some of the African countries, let's not say all African countries. Siemens has already some good experience in Egypt and Nigeria, in Ethiopia. Do you think other African countries are ready to use this great opportunity and get the best out of it?
Well, most of them are trying really hard. They have different circumstances. But if I look at Ghana, for example, Senegal, Ivory Coast, Rwanda. So there is a lot of active people. There are active leaders who take their destiny into their own hand. The leader of Ghana just said, "Look, I don't want to be just always receiving money. I also want to, create value out of it." And Rwanda has been very active for economic development, industrial development. We're doing an e-mobility project there together with Volkswagen in the middle of Africa. So there are many good initiatives. Now, some countries are more advanced, others are less. Egypt is very, very, very strong in its infrastructural agenda. Others are, let's say, a bit more engaged in internal discussions on how exactly should we do this. Others need more help in terms of financing and getting the governance better together. So, I mean, we cannot have this continent to be treated like one continent. There's 55 countries. There are 54, 55 countries. So every country has its own particularities, and we just need to prioritize also. I cannot go to all 55. So I need to go see who can do things first, second, and third, so that we also learn from each other, that we can apply certain projects and certain experiences to other countries, bring countries together. Interestingly enough now, Egypt, thanks to our bigger projects, which we really executed well together with the country, you know, then Egypt now can export, has a surplus, they can export energy into Sudan, for example, which
and I think you're cooperating with Egypt on that project, right?
Yeah, we do, because you need to transport the power to the country, so we do interconnector and grid solutions there. So that means, you know, once we have started something, they can take each other's benefits and cooperate and collaborate and form an ecosystem, which becomes wider and wider and wider. So I believe there is a lot of opportunities, still some challenges, but the opportunities are much higher than the challenges are.
Actually, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, for several times, he has been saying that with all that has been achieved in Egypt in the past 5-6 years, that he's so interested to share this experience with other African countries. And this takes me to some investors and people who are working in the banking sector that I have met and talked with on international level, and they're always seeing that there are huge opportunities, massive opportunities in Africa, and they always say that Egypt is the gateway to Africa. Do you agree with that point of view?
Well, Egypt certainly has proven that they can get things done. I mean, if you look at the record speed, how the second line of the Suez Canal has been built, if you look at how we have been able to build those 3
power plants,
biggest power plants ever built on the planet, 3 of them in less than 3 years after financial close, that would have been impossible without a very close partnership with the government, from security through safety, through acquiring firms. We brought almost 400 European firms, small, medium enterprises, with us. We have been enabling hundreds of small, medium enterprises in Egypt, you know, to go with us on the mega projects. So it's been a massive benefit. So the president has a lot to offer, a lot to show to the African colleagues on how to get things done. And you know, there's also the matter of leadership. This is always a complicated matter. If you come from a European context or other Western context, many people may say, well, you know, democracy needs to be applied and we also need to have democratic structures. Well, you know, I think in certain parts of economic development, probably you need to put leadership above and beyond every democratic process. It can come later. But first, economies need to develop, and they require strong leadership. Of course, they require justice and human rights and everything. We understand that and need to be mindful. But also that needs to be developed over time. And I believe if somebody has to choose between chaos and a very clear order, you need to go for the order first, and then develop a society which can handle democracy.
Speaking of the 3 mega power plants, you said that those projects set a new record. They are record-breaking. What's very special? What happened that made this very special and different than any other experience for Siemens around the world?
Yeah, it's a very good question, honestly, because that question I'm being asked all over the world. There is almost, no matter where I go, for bigger projects, mostly in developing economies, they all ask me about the Egypt project. They said, we want to have an Egyptian project. How did you do this in Egypt, in Iraq, in Nigeria, in many, many countries in the world? They say, hey, we want to do the same thing with you as you did in Egypt. I said, well, be my guest, I'm happy to. But it's not that simple. I think what happened in a way which is unprecedented was the partnership between the government with its very, very strong leadership. Then the financing world has been taking all its heart together, its courage together, and said, well, we are going to try to work this out. The German government has been massively financing, obviously, but other financial institutions have been kicking in. And last but not least, Siemens, with all its partners on small medium enterprises, bigger partners, L3D or Ascom on a local base, we did get the job done. So it was almost a unique partnership between 3-4 different constituencies, which got it done in the end.
Do you think this equation can be repeated again somewhere else?
Well, why not? Why not? The only one thing I'm always mindful about and tell the other leaders, typically political leaders, is look, you know, Egypt is Egypt. Now tell me about your country. You know, what exactly is it? I was in Baghdad many times in the last year and a half because the country has been freed up now. It needs to be rebuilt. They're also looking for such landmark projects. And I said, look, let's go sit together because Iraq is Iraq and Egypt has been Egypt. So the question is, what can we learn from the partnership and the achievements in Egypt, and how can we adapt and adopt this one into local conditions? And this is, I think, the way to go. And but then again, it adds a lot of credibility to Siemens, of course. It adds a lot of admiration for the Egyptian leadership, definitely is. And today there was the economic roundtable, which has been also chaired by the president, and the moderator, Richard Quest, one of your colleagues, you know him,
one of the best,
has asking, certainly one of the most lively ones.
Yeah.
And he said, hey, you know, tell me about what it takes to get Africa up to speed. I said, look, it takes leadership, it takes courage, it takes competency, and it takes education, and it takes reliable partners. So at least those 5, and you've got them, you know, lined up. This is then everything is possible. And partners like financial sector or competent companies which chip into education too. I mean, we have not only been bringing gas turbines, we have not only bringing projects, we have not only bringing the grid, we have also been bringing education. And said, hey, you know, we are going to train young people because they need to have that education to run the power plants well, and the grid and the control center and other things. So it's been a very symbiotic development, which I'm very proud about, very grateful also to the Egyptian leadership and its people. And it's been a lot of fun to work this together. And I told the president today, because he was asking me about a different project he wanted us to get engaged with, and he didn't like the conditions we have been, let's say, proposing. And I said, look, I said, you know, you need to be cheaper, faster, you're not good enough, so you have been doing better in the past. I said, Mr. President, you know, the Egyptian mega projects, the relationship which we have had over the last 3-4 years now, what we have been achieving together is a very, very, for me personally and for our company, is a very valuable asset. And if I'm quoting you something on timelines, this is not about making too much money on you. This is about that we have too much to lose if we don't get the next project well, because the reputation is so high. The benchmark which Egypt has been setting together with Siemens on the power plants, you know, is a global world record benchmark. I'm not going to go in and say, I'm going to do this for you on making money. If I go and promise something to you, I told him, then I have a reputation on the line to make it good, what you have been expecting from us in the past and getting from us in the past. So, and he looked at me and said, yeah, well, but you still need to be faster and better. I said, yeah, I will do that, but the highest good I have is the reputation which we have been building together. I'm not going to, told him, look, I'm not going to let you down. And if this is what it takes, this is what it takes. And if I have the doubt that I can not live up to the highest standards, given the requirement, I'd rather not quote. You know, then maybe somebody else should do it this time, because I would never let him down by not being clear and accurate about what we can do and cannot do.
Yeah, I'm curious to know, when you're starting to propose a new project, do you put in mind that you have to make the price a little bit higher because you know the president is a very good negotiator, so he's going to bring it down?
No, we are past that one. And it's interesting, when we met first time in Sharm el-Sheikh, it was about one project, Beni Suef, that was the one.
Yeah.
The other two were following
That was back in 2015, I guess, right?
If not earlier. So it was a long time ago, it feels, and we've been meeting at the economic conference in Sharm el-Sheikh, and that's where we met the first time. And he, you know, it was about negotiating, but it became very clear to me his motivation to be so tough on negotiating was not so much about squeezing the company, it was more about, you know, getting the best for his people. And with the development on relationship and competency and experience, you know, the regards are so high that I would never say, well, let's be 20% higher and I give him 15 and I'm still better off. That's not the type of deal you do with people you trust and you get to know as a very reliable person. Look, I mean, when we did those 3 mega projects then, the issue was speed, because obviously as a president he needed to show his people that there's progress.
Yes, and there was a challenge we needed to get over.
It was a big challenge because, you know, it was about financing and the contracts. I mean, if you have an 8 billion euro project, which was 10 billion US dollars at the time, based on the exchange rate, this is not something you do overnight. And you know, the deal we made was like this. And he said, I want you to get this done. And I said, look, this is a big project. We need to do contracts. And he said, I don't need contracts. You know, I promise you we'll get that done. And based on that, and I looked at him and he looked at me and I thought, and then I went back home and we ordered already material. And the biggest exposure we had was about 800 million euro, which we have already been getting, material and contracts with our suppliers, and I still didn't have a contract with the Egyptian government. I would not be here today if that had failed. Because I would be out of the job. I probably would still be in jail for misrepresenting, you know, the company's assets. So it was a lot about trust. And if you go through that in a successful way, you're not going to do this deal like, you know, I quoted something and I afforded, because I'm sure he would go back to me and say, okay, well, maybe you quoted 20% higher, so I want 40% more. That's the same thing. That's not the way it works. So it's been a remarkable relationship, I have to say.
This relationship, it's not only because maybe most Egyptians, when we say Siemens, what comes to mind are the 3 mega projects. But I'm sure there are other projects like the 12 wind farms, for example.
Well, we have done much more in the meantime. Even at the time when we agreed on the 3 projects, the immediate response I was giving to the president and Minister Shaker, I said, look, are you really sure that you can get this power which comes out of those huge power plants to the people? How about the grid? How about the distribution? How about making sure that people pay for the electricity they get? So did you look at the whole value chain? And he looked at me like, what do you mean? And then he looked to Dr. Shaker and he said, do we have everything? And we concluded maybe not. So we went in and looked at the grid, the substation, and you know, the grid modernization. So we did a lot in between the agreement of the power plants versus then when the power plants gave first power to the people. So there was a lot of projects in between which we did to make sure that we not only produce power but also get it to where it's being needed. And then we looked at substation. In the meantime, we are building the interconnectors towards the African countries down
Yeah.
down to the
But I
south.
think also a couple of years ago there was a memorandum of understanding signed between you and the Egyptian government regarding the electricity grid and developing it up to I think 2025.
No, it's an ongoing matter now.
Yeah.
I mean, with 100 million people, you know, there's a lot of power which is being needed. So we've been working together on a case-by-case study. We come in and discuss it and then say this is the solution we would recommend. And then most of the time it works out. We also have done a lot on the renewable energy piece. There's just another tender out for 500 megawatt where we are actively engaged. We did help on the whole Suez area. We, by the way, have been hiring a lot of people here for software engineering with our Mentor Graphics subsidiary. So totally different thing, digitalization, software people. So there is a lot going on where we just go to work and don't talk so much about it.
So there's a cooperation with the Egyptian government in terms of the digital transformation Egypt is interested to go through.
We've been hiring a lot of people here. Mentor Graphics is very successful, which is a Siemens company. And we have a lot of people here in Egypt, in the greater Cairo environment. So there's a lot of good stuff happening, really.
Well, Mr. Kaiser, if you excuse us, we'll take a quick break and be back. مشاهدينا الكرام، فاصل سريع ونستكمل حوارنا مع الرئيس التنفيذي ورئيس مجلس إدارة شركة سيمنز العالمية، فأرجو أن تبقوا معنا. مشاهدينا الكرام، بنعيد الترحيب على حضراتكم معنا مرة تانية وبنستكمل حوارنا مع السيد جو كايسر المدير التنفيذي ورئيس مجلس إدارة شركة سيمنز العالمية. Mr. Kaiser, I think you noticed that the Egyptian government and the Egyptian president are really showing strong interest in electric cars, automobiles, and transportation, electric transportation as well. Is there any type of cooperation between Siemens and Egypt in that sense?
We are not building cars, and nor do we build components to the cars. What we do is we
infrastructure as well.
We automate the factories. We are the world's largest and by far most advanced automation company especially in the discrete automotive sector, but elsewhere too. But what we have been agreeing to is that we said we need to look now more into the mobility management sector. I mean, this morning I was flying in from China and we had a different landing route, and I was literally going all the way over Cairo before we've been touching down. It's such a huge city.
Yeah,
it's a real mega city. So a lot needs to be done in that area, in the mobility area, because see, Egypt has very successfully sorted out its energy agenda, like probably no one else in the world. So what you typically see in developing economies, the next step now is how to efficiently move people and goods. Very important. So there's the natural, let's say, development now is the infrastructure mobility environment. This could be metros, this can be high-speed trains, that could also be moving goods in a more efficient way. By sea, it's the Suez Canal, but by land, there's got to be more efficiency there. So that could be, another area to look at together, because those are typically areas which you need to have before industrialization comes, before companies come in to manufacture, to do engineering and things like that. So that could be a natural development, and we'll see what we can do together there.
Yeah. Mr. Kaiser, you also mentioned something about education, and I'm sure with all those projects that you are cooperating with Egypt in, that you are educating a lot of technicians and engineers, Egyptian technicians and engineers, and maybe on the other side we have the Egyptian-German Technical Academy, that I think Siemens has a role to play in that academy as well.
We do play a massive role. This is a joint project between the Egyptian government, the German Economic Development Ministry, as well as Siemens. We agreed that we are going to train 6,000 young people with the dual apprenticeship model. It was the former Mubarak coal model. It's been a history here a long time ago, so we have been reiterating that and revamping it with modern ways of doing it. Everything includes digitalization, because this is the future of man-machine interfaces, needs to be learned. So we're very active there. The German government is very supportive, Egyptian government too. So it's quite a success story also in education.
This is very interesting. With all this digital transformation that is happening in the world, I want to know how do you see the world in a couple of years. But first, regarding Egypt and your experience in Egypt now for the past 4 or 5 years, with all the things happening in the electricity field and other sectors as well, how do you see Egypt in the next 5 years?
Well, I mean, see, when I come to Egypt today, it's like coming and meeting friends. It's different in the meantime because we've achieved so much together. And you know, if you see friends, you want them to be successful, and you want them to develop and you know, have children, next generation doing well in the next generation. So it's a very almost an emotional relationship in the meantime, because it's been a very well developing partnership. So I do believe that if the leadership continues, Egypt should actually be the leader of the African world. Maybe with a handful more, they need to take on the leadership in the African world. Maybe Nigeria, maybe smaller, but in terms of leadership, Rwanda, and others to bring the African continent forward. Not by all 55 all together, it's not going to work, but by setting the right priority. By coming together and form an African compact and say, look, we are Africa, these are the priorities which we have. And then we are leading Africa towards China, towards Europe, and set the priorities right. As you said earlier, everybody looks at Africa because the potential is just huge. But Africa shouldn't just sit there and wait till they all come over and try to take away their natural resources, because that will never develop into meaningful value-add development. So Africa needs to form a leadership together, say these are the priorities. So if you come to our country, you know, take our money for infrastructure and energy, that's the set of requirements you better bring with you. And then I think people will come and there will be a meaningful dialogue about it. So I have a very high wish and hope that the leadership in Egypt continues, that Al-Sisi takes over even more responsibility with African country and develops one after another. Of course, I'm aware of geopolitics, which is always in the way of a economic development. It's just the way the world happens. But as I say, there don't need to be 55 marching at the same speed. There don't need to be 55 marching into the same direction. Some have their priorities here, others have the priorities there. But you know, we just need to take the big ones first, and then the others will follow.
Just I'm curious also to ask, when we're talking now on a global scale, to what extent is Siemens affected by the decreasing growth rates and expectations that it's going to decrease more? How are you affected with what's happening between the US and China, for example? To what extent are you feeling that this is having a strong impact on Siemens and on the global economy?
Well, I mean, there are a few aspects to that. The first one, obviously, is that by now, everybody in the world should, especially the players associated with it, should have understood that trade wars have no winners. Instead, they take down the global economy. And if there's a trade war between a number one and number two in the economic world, not talking defense, the economic world, then obviously, you know, the impact is bigger. So today we are in a situation after 2 years of growth everywhere, that every economy of the bigger ones is slowing down. And if the big economies slow down, naturally this will have an impact on developing economies because the investment will be subdued.
True.
So it's been not a good development. As far as Siemens is concerned, look, I mean, our competitors are also affected, so there is no change in being, performing better than our competitors. What I'm concerned about is this, what I hear more and more is two things. First, this, doing away from multilateralism towards bilateral deals. This is not good for a global, networked and connected world. Especially if you think about what we call Industry 4.0 or the Fourth Industrial Revolution or Internet of Things. It's all the same.
Yeah.
So Internet of Things means everything is connected. All things are being connected. And all people are being connected by communication.
Yeah.
So if there is global connectivity, that needs to have an extraterritorial understanding of free flow of data. Otherwise you cannot connect things if you are disconnected by territorial boundaries.
Yes.
So you need to naturally find a global understanding on connecting everything, otherwise it's meaningless to even try it. So this is what technology gives us in the future. Now if you look at how much nationalism has been actually counteracting this, global extraterritorial order, you see that we have two things here which go in different directions. So that's something which needs to be addressed, and bilateral deals are not helpful in finding global world trade order. I tend to agree with the American president and others, by the way, who say the WTO needs to be reformed. It's been a long time when it was formulated, so maybe it needs to be modernized, but it should prevail as a global world trade order, addressing also the cyber matters, cyber security, free flow of data, protection of data at the same time. So we may need to add some paragraphs in the global, in the WTO, so it maybe needs to be modernized, but it should stay. And it also should enable fair trade and open trade. And this is also the concern, because sometimes governments or people are, let's say, confusing the root cause of trade imbalance. So if the root cause of trade imbalance is dumping price, which is unfair trade, well, then you need to look at the dumping and the unfair trade and fix it. If the root cause of trade imbalance is the lack of competitiveness, then the cure is not more tariffs. The cure is invest in innovation and productivity.
Yeah.
Because there is no such customer, for example, in the US or other places where there is a import deficit, no such customer which is being forced to buy, for example, German cars. Nobody in the United States is forced to buy German cars. They buy it because they want them. So, if you then have a trade imbalance based on this one, maybe it's better to build better cars by innovation and things like that. Just an example, and it goes both ways, by the way. I also don't think it's a good idea to prevent American farmers, for example, in getting their goods into Europe, just because European, agriculture is less effective. So we need to find an open dialogue on this one, and there's many ways to do that. So that's important, is multilateralism, global trade order. And then I think we will be fine to go, and the world has a good chance to be a better world in the future, because all the last three industrial revolutions have made the world a better world. All three industrial revolutions have taken millions and millions and millions of people out of poverty, and we need to continue that process. Because we cannot afford to have a divided society, we cannot afford to have a divided world. So that's why we need to be inclusive of society, and the recipe is helping the weaker ones to come along.
But if the three past industrial revolutions created more jobs, made it people get out of poverty, improved the economy of some countries, looking at the present challenges and maybe the new technology that is coming every once in a while, sometimes every day, and with the digital transformation and revolution that's happening, how do you see the world in the next 5 to 10 years? Do you think it's going to be a better place, or things might get a little bit more complicated?
If we get it right on global inclusive capitalism, if you get it right to include societies more rather than split them apart even further, then the fourth industrial revolution will also be producing a better world. Because technology will help people to have jobs, will help people to afford things which they have not been able to afford. Just think about the technology we could use in manufacturing with our digital twin, digitalization in manufacturing. What we at Siemens can do already today, we can build a digital twin of any hardware, a computer, a desk, a chair, a car, anything. So with that, we will actually be able to reduce the time it takes to develop new products by 50%. So 50% faster. That will boost innovation massively. Today already we can bring down the cost for products in manufacturing by 30–40%. So what it means is that people who have not been able to afford a car or a product can afford it in the future because it's getting cheaper. So you create demand. And by creating demand, you create opportunities. However, and that brings me back to this inclusive societal development. However, there will be about a study, I think from McKinsey, and there are many studies which are similar in their result. That study says that about 375 million jobs are going to be changed in the next 10 years. That's just about 10%, 12% of the global workforce. That means there will be massive paradigm shifts. So we need to be very mindful about getting those people, those employees, prepared for those changing jobs. And that's why, for example, in Siemens, we spend 600 million euro every year for training and retraining our people. A lot of money. And that's is necessary that all the global companies do that they help the small, medium enterprises to come along. They are the most challenged ones because they are small, they don't have the scale, so they cannot retrain all those people. So we need to help them get connected. And then we'll also have the fourth industrial revolution be a beneficial thing for the planet, including obviously reducing emission and things like that, which is necessary. So I'm reasonably optimistic. However, time and again, I need to warn that we need to take this responsibility as global leaders, politics, society, companies, that we are inclusive of society, that we help the weaker ones come along, that we train people, that we help them have a meaningful life. Because if we don't do this, digitalization is binary. It is 0–1, right? It's winning or losing. So what that means is, inherently, digitalization with its binary approach will split society even more, technologically, because not everybody is a software engineer, right? So we need to really be inclusive, explain that well, and then we will have a better life, I'm pretty sure. I like how you have an optimistic point of view regarding that, and I hope really that everybody put things on the right track, so this revolution that is happening makes the world a better place, not a worse one. We have all the ingredients it takes to do so. And that's why I'm reasonably confident that we'll get the job done. Is it easy? No, it isn't. Does it have risk? Absolutely. Am I concerned in a way to get it right? Absolutely. But you know what? I'm not being paid as a leader to be concerned. I'm being paid to show people the way.
Yes.
On where we are going and be the first one to carry the flag. And this is all about leadership, and that sort of closes the loop between what we have been starting out in our conversation. You've got to have leadership, you've got to have courage, you've got to have education, you've got to have partners. And you also, in a way, have to have a dream about something where it pays and it rewards, you know, to put all your work and all your life into something to get the benefit out of it. So that's where we are, and that's how we should be. And
hopefully it will be better very soon.
Yeah, will be. Don't worry about it. And as I said, Egypt has all the ingredients. You know, 100 million people, mostly young people, they can take leadership for African interests, and we are here, Siemens is here, to be part of it.
Yeah, we're happy for this cooperation, and we're looking forward to more projects in the future, hopefully, with the Siemens. I'd like to thank you so much for your time, Mr. Joe Kaiser, CEO of Siemens, and you're always welcome to come back to Egypt, meet your friends, and we look forward to meeting again hopefully soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. مشاهدينا الكرام، بشكركم على طيب المتابعة، وأعتقد من خلال هذا الحوار يعني هناك قراءات عديدة تستطيعون قراءتها. كلام رئيس مجلس إدارة والرئيس التنفيذي لشركة سيمنز جو كايسر على الرئيس عبد الفتاح السيسي والرؤية المصرية، ما تم تنفيذه على مدار السنوات الماضية، ما هي الخطط المستقبلية في قطاعات مختلفة في مصر. أعتقد كلها كانت ملامح مهمة جدا إن احنا نطلع حضراتكم عليها من خلال هذا الحوار. بشكر حضراتكم على طيب المتابعة، ودائما تابعونا في مساء DMC تجدوا الجديد. دمتم في أمان الله.